Sounds good. Sounds good. Let me introduce myself. Some of the room I recognize some people. I've been in the financial service business about 48 years. I started originally door-to-door for Prudential Life Insurance Company. And that came out of an agent that actually stole my cash value out of a policy. I was buying another policy. At that time, I owned a business in Rochester here called Tom's Auto Body. I don't know if anybody here old enough to remember that. But that was my first business, and I needed more life insurance, so we called my agent, who was from Pittsburgh, and came to the house. And in the long run, he led me to believe I could only own one policy, so he wanted to end another old policy to start a new one, and had to pay premiums for 3 months, so they wouldn't charge back to him. Well, he used my cash value to pay those premiums, caught him, turned it all around, which was great. Next thing I know, there's a guy in my kitchen named Don Workley. He was the sales manager, and he says, "You'd be good at this." So that was the beginning, and from there. And if I go back a little further, growing up, I wanted to be an auto mechanic. My dad had an 8th grade education, so academics wasn't ever discussed in our house. It just wasn't the way it was going to be. I was going to work on cars all my life. I went into the Air Force, and my dream was to work on jet aircraft engines. I wanted to work on jet engines. And while I was in basic, you take this big test for 3 hours, and when basic was over, I didn't get any orders. Out of 100 guys in the barracks, I was the one guy didn't get any orders to go anywhere. So after about 3 weeks of getting in trouble, because I had an anger issue back then, and so I ended up in the commander's office, and he said, "Look, young," he says, "you took this test and you were the second highest out of 100 people. I don't need mechanics, I need medics." So they sent me to medical school, which went to medical school. Got out of the Air Force, married the first adult lady I ever met, Teresa. We've been married to be 54 years this past April. So I'm she's my other half, and just always been that way, and I'm blessed because she was the wind beneath my wings many times when I would stub my toe and stumble and not figure out where to go, and she was always the one that believed in me. Had a garage, sold the garage, I got bored with it, it wasn't what I thought it was going to be. Ended up working at Beglan Ford down in Bridgewater. Those of you remember Beglan Ford. And a short period there, I became the head mechanic of the place. And 1 year and 1 day, I left to go to Prudential. And when I went to the Prudential office, now I was the automatic transmission service guy. You ever see red juice, what transmission juice looks like? I weighed about 250 pounds. I was a big guy. And it's January, and I had this burly plaid brown and tan coat on with orange spots on it from the transmission juice. And that was how I went to the Prudential office to meet the manager for my appointment that day. So I went in there, met him, and he said these things, and I said, "Don't blank me," and he says, "You got to take this test." So I had 28 questions. I took the test right there in front of him. I handed it back to him, and he looked at it and looked at it. And he said, "How'd you do that?" I said, "Do what?" He said, "I've been a manager for 30 years. No one ever got all of them right." I did. 28 out of 28. I didn't think nothing of it then. There's a point to why I'm telling you this story. Because growing up, I didn't have any whims of what kind of success I would have in my future. And that day when this happened, and then I started for Prudential. The first year I was the #1 agent in the office out of 60, because I just worked every day. I worked harder than anybody else. To me, it was an opportunity of a lifetime. Oh, thank you. Opportunity of a lifetime, and I wasn't going to be left out. Then they made me a sales manager. In the second year, I had 7 guys that worked on my staff, and we were 88 out of 95, and at the end of the year we were 11th. So I got all kind of accolades and awards, and then I resigned the position because I figured out how much money I made for the other 7 guys. I worked every night of the week, and they only worked the night that I took them out. They didn't work any of the other nights. Was an agent in my 3rd year. I ended up 86 in the company out of 25,000 agents. I just worked. And that was when I resigned from Prudential, because I got to a point where I couldn't do for me what they were telling me to tell you. I didn't know why. It just didn't seem right because 3 years of my own business, I thought differently. And I left. And when I left, I was on search for the truth, for what was real and what could go on in the future. I was really doing well. And then I had a lawsuit come along in the late 80s for $800,000. Sheriff showed up at my door on a Saturday morning, knocked on the door. And long story short, it lasted 3.5 years. And that 3.5 years, it pretty much destroyed my confidence. I didn't make any money for 3 years, and so I borrowed every dime, dollar I could, everywhere I could, to pay bills. And when we went to the deposition 3.5 years out, I was actually exonerated, and they went after my CPA's son, who had referred the client to me in the first place. I won't go into all the details, but the day I got that letter of exoneration, I mean, that was the burden taken off my shoulder, but I was $500,000 in debt, and no job and no money. A friend of mine, Richard Caputo Insurance Agency in Beaver Falls, I went to see him and I said, I need a job. And I ended up president of First Consultants, Inc., which was a company he created that I actually purchased from him, and that's what I'm known as now as First Consultants. But it's been a journey. Everything got paid. I didn't file bankruptcy. I had a coach, Jody Victor, in the Amway business. I was in the Amway business at that time and still am. But Jody said to me one day, he says, you want to quit or you want to fix it? Well, there's no quit in my DNA, those that know me. And so with Jody's coaching, and his mother and father were two of the original people that started the Amway business, 2 of the 8. So he was a good coach, still is today. And that began the growth of understanding what's going on. Now, about 25 years ago, my thinking changed diametrically. And when I meet people today, they say, what do you do? And I say, well, I'm in the financial services business, but I have a very unique approach. And my unique approach is that I believe the average family should end up at retirement with not a dollar less than $1.5 million. And I can prove that. And that's why the banks, see, we're all brainwashed. We have all been brainwashed by the banks and the financial institutions. And here we are today. Now, I'm going to bring up a slide. You want to bring up the debt slide? Now, you can't see this from where you're at, I'm sorry. But anybody here ever heard of the USDebtClock.org? Do you go to it periodically and look at it? I do every week. And I talk about it in my podcast. Now, right now, the debt is $32.731 trillion. That is $97,000 per person in America. Now, that's a number, but there's a more important number down on the lower right, and it's $193.369 trillion. And that's the unfunded liability. Now, what is that? That's Social Security, Medicare Part A, B, and D, and pensions and benefits for all the government employees and all the military. Does anybody know how many employees the government has? 23 million. They are the largest employer in America with 23 million employees. Now, the point of all that is, there it is. Now, I can go through things where number of people working in 2000 and on and on and on. The revenue collected was 4.6 trillion, and they spent 6.4. Now, that's like you having an income of 46,000 a year, and you spent 64,000. How many years could you do that? I don't think that would work too long for most people in what's going on. But do you realize now, I started in 1976, early 77. We remember 79, Jimmy Carter, interest rates went through the roof. And that was the beginning of what we know today as financial planning. I don't like that word because you could talk to 10 different people in 10 different segments of the financial business, and they say, well, I'm in the financial planning business. Well, in most cases, it's a lie, because most of them are stockbrokers. They don't do any planning. There's no macroeconomics to it, which is what is required for all of those things. Truth takes pain to figure out what the truth is. Lies are easily believed, but truth takes work. And those of you that are here, I think you understand MAGA. I'm a MAGA person, and thank you. And I just, my one minute dissertation is I have been waiting for the lawsuits or the indictments to come, and I believe with all my heart it'll be the opportunity to present the true truth that nobody has heard, because the mainstream media is controlled by 6 billionaires around the world, and they're all in the One World Economic Forum, so I'm not going to go there tonight. So, all right. The financial world taught us how to trap our money. Now, you look at the debt clock and think of the future. Who in the room believes the taxes in the future are going to be lower than they are today? No hands. How many people in the room have a 401k IRA tax qualified plan? Okay. Do you know what you just admitted? You told me the taxes aren't going to be lower in the future. Most likely, who would bet they're going to be higher? Does it make sense? Is it common sense for you to postpone paying the tax on your money, getting control of it, versus trapping it with the financial world and allowing them to make money off of it through fractional banking and all the other things that go on out there? There's a story that I heard in the beginning, and it's called the 100-man story. Now I'm going to call it the 100-person story to be politically correct, okay? And Princeton, these big colleges, they got 25-year-olds, 100 of them, and they interviewed them and talked about their dreams and goals for the future and what the future was going to be like. Well, they went back and looked for them 40 years later at age 65. Statistics: one was rich. 4 of them were well off and doing pretty well. 5 were still working because they couldn't stop. 36 have died, mortality. And 54 were dependent on somebody else, something else, church, social, whatever. They couldn't make it on the road. Now, I heard that story 45 years ago. Do you think it's any different today?
It's higher.
It absolutely is not. Now, here's the question that goes with that. With all of the financial planning advice and everything that's out there, how come it hasn't gotten any better? Isn't that a good question?
Cool, game is ready.
See, because the financial world, along with the WEC, the World Economic Forum, the One World Government, the United Nations, there is a plan out there. I brought everybody a gift tonight, a copy of my book. Okay, if you like an autograph, I'll be around after the meeting and I'll autograph them. But in the book is a gift, and I'll talk about that in a little while. But when we look around us at what's going on, all the advice that you're getting from everybody emanates from the financial world, and the lobbyists that lobby the government to get all the rules. Our politicians aren't smart enough to make laws. The lobbyists buy the laws.
That's right.
Okay, from all the segments of the government. I apologize if there are any politicians in the room, but unfortunately, even the local politicians, when I'm in a meeting, I always ask them the question: have you heard of Mike Lindell? Have you seen any of the information from the Cyber Symposium? Have you looked at any of that information? Well, no, I haven't. Well, how can you have an optimistic or an objective view of anything if you're unwilling to do the research that is there, that has been blocked? Okay. I congratulate you all for being here tonight. This means you already think differently.
That's right.
Than other people that are out there because you're here. So what I do for a living is I change the way people think. With mathematics, what I do is mathematical. I have a $1,000 challenge, and I've had it since 1986. My first teleforum radio show in Beaver Falls with Chris Shovelin. Anybody know Chris Shovelin? And he's also a client, so he can't listen to me for very long and not become a client. That's my warning tonight, so that you know that, and going forward. But learning is painful, and I got to share a story. Right now I got a torn rotator cuff, and I got a pinched nerve in my back, and my leg goes numb down my leg. But let's go back to last fall. I'm an avid golfer. I'm a duffer. I don't do well, but I love to play. And I belong to Seven Oaks, and on the ninth hole, anybody knows about the ninth hole, you come off the tee, it's downhill, and there's a pond over here. Well, I hit the ball, and it went in the pond. So I go down where the pond is, and you drop the ball. So I drop the ball, and golf shoes, anybody familiar with golf shoes? They have golf shoes that have these crazy cleats on the bottom. They used to be metal, but they're plastic now. And then the new kind of golf shoes have nubs. They don't even have cleats, they're just nubs on the bottom. Well, I had nubs on that day. And I had a 180-yard shot up to the green, and man, I was going to put that ball right up on that green. And I got my 7-wood out of the bag, and I got up there, and I got it all lined up. And I put every ounce of my effort into that ball. The grass was wet, and I did 180 degree, landed on this shoulder right here. I got up and shook it off, but shortly after that, I started to have like a hot wire pain down back in through the muscle. And then this spring, I really got aggressive with my golf, and now I got it torn. But that's what it was. See, it's like the truth. It's painful to learn the truth that you're getting old. Now, I don't use that term. I believe we're chronologically gifted. So we don't get older, we become chronologically gifted in what we're doing. So, and Paul Harvey would say the rest of the story is, we all were born in a black box. Imagine that. A black box. Black inside, no light. Black is void of light, okay? Black isn't something, it's just void of light. And you were born there. So you could have been blind and not known it, because it's black. You never saw light in any way, shape, or form. And then one day, all of a sudden, somebody come along and they poked a hole in that box. Now just imagine with me that the first time ever you experienced light, would it have been painful? That light coming in that little hole? So after a little while, your eyes start to adjust to it, and all of a sudden you go over and you start digging at the hole, and you make it a little bit bigger, and you realize that there's a beautiful world out there with sky, and sun, and trees, and green, and all that is out there. So we all are in a black box. The black box around us was created by the politicians, the news media, and the financial Wall Street, because they want control of your money. They have 4 rules. I want all your money, where I'm going, keep it forever, and give back as little as possible. That allows them to maximize their profit for their stockholders. What do you think the perfect product that they promote to everybody that meets that criteria darn near perfect? No? 401k, IRA. You put all that money in there, right? Can you get it out without severe penalty and taxes?
Yeah.
No, so you have to leave it there forever.
Wow.
And the HR guy at work says, boy, put all you can in there, maximize your 401k. And then a young couple with 2 little ones trying to raise a family, he's putting all he can into his 401k. How does he buy a car? Oh, go see my buddy, the banker. See, it's a game, folks. The game is stacked against you. That's why the 100-person rule still applies today as always before. And it's not going to change anytime soon. So what you have to do is you have to make a decision to separate your world from the other world. In other words, if you could have a financial world of your own that was devoid of the government, and you could use that over and over and over again to buy things, pay for things, and then transfer it to the next generation in your family tax-free. And the government has no knowledge of what it is or how it gets transferred. Would that be a perfect world?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm really going to blow your mind when I talk about this, because I want to talk now. I'll come back to that. I like circles. I like big circles, but I'll make it all connect together. The smartest people in the world are one of our biggest problems today. Does anybody know who the smartest people in the world is? Anybody ever heard of the Club of Rome? Club of Rome. Oh, there's a lady. She's heard of the Club of Rome.
Oh, no, I haven't.
No, you haven't. They were formed in 1968. And they were a group of people that was supposed to be the smartest people on the planet. They have no insight. They have no ability to envision anything into the future. They're a bunch of nerdy neophytes, in Tom's opinion. So in 1968, they formed, and their first objective was to save the planet. They were going to make a projection of what was going to happen in the future. And doggone it, you know what their first projection was? The world was going to be out of crude oil by 1993. Go figure. Go figure. Now, those of you that are a little chronologically gifted, I'm sure you remember some of the stories along the way, okay? And I'll just throw this in for you. The net zero program, has anybody heard of that? The climate change people? That was emanated from the Club of Rome, started that. And their goal was net zero by 2030, no matter what it costs. That was their goal. Now, 68, they projected that oil was going to be gone by 1993. A guy named Thurman and another one named Rees-Mogg from England wrote a book called The Great Reckoning of 1993. Great book, but it was a book about what was going to happen to the world if, in fact, we did run out of crude oil, that obviously we didn't. And now I guess they're telling us there's 200 or 300 years of this stuff we're not going to run out. I think they need to spend more money figuring out how to use it more efficiently than attacking it, and then us paying $2 more a gallon for gasoline. And I don't think it's over. I think it's going up even more than we're right now. Now, wouldn't you know, now here's oil going to be gone. Now, at that time, in 69, where was most of the oil in the world believed to be positioned? Wasn't it on the sands of Saudi Arabia?
Yeah.
Well, see, in my story, there was a world oil broker in South America called Perez. And he dealt with everybody around the world. And there was another group of folks, the Texas Railroad Commission. Anybody heard of the Texas Railroad Commission? Now, I wonder what they do. I guess they monitor the oil and gas and minerals in the United States. They're sort of America's version of OPEC, right? So this Perez guy, he saw what the Texas guys were doing. So he goes to the Arabs and says, hey, if you guys can control the crude oil, look what you can do. In 1969, OPEC was formed. Crude oil was $1.23 a barrel. 3 years later, you remember the price? It was $12 a barrel. 1,000% increase in 3 years. Anybody remember the gas lines in 1974, 1975?
Oh, yeah.
And the 11 o'clock news was the fist fights of people jumping in line and what was going on. It was all a hoax, folks. It's still a hoax today going on that is perpetuated by the billionaires of the world, and that's how they make money off of us. In my book, when you read it, you'll find a story in there called The Billionaire Lemming Effect. Now, has anybody heard of lemmings? You know, they're like grinnies. You know what grinnies are? You know, chipmunks. They're lemmings. They have no leadership. So little George Lemming got up one morning. He lived on the east side of Lemmingville, and he decided, that's it, I'm done. I'm going to take my life today. I'm going to end it. And I'm going to run through town, and on the west side of town is a cliff down 400 feet to the rocks and the water. And I'm going to run as fast as I can, and I'm going to jump off that cliff and take my life. So little old George, he comes running down the road, and here he comes, and he gets to the edge of Lemmingville, and all the little lemmings saw George and said, where's George going? So they all get out, and they're chasing George. Down the street, they're chasing him. But when they got to the cliff, how many of them do you think went over the cliff with George? See, if you think of all the organization, I'll use George Soros as the name, because we're all familiar with what he does. He funds all these social organizations and everything, and they use that to get people thinking a certain way. And if they get the group large enough, thinking a certain way, they position their money in front of them and drive them toward their money so they can make more money. Al Gore was broke when he got out of the political arena, and he climbed onto the climate change thing. And I guess he's pretty close to being a billionaire today, from what I understand. But we have to step back from that. We have to step back and do things on our own. Now, OPEC came along, 1972, the next domino, President Nixon removed us from the gold standard. Well, what was Pandora's box that got opened? It's called fractional banking, folks. Fractional banking, you put $1 in the bank and they can create on average $7 more. I passed out earlier, if you got your list, I don't know if you ever heard of Nesara and Gesara.
Yep.
I believe this is what's coming. It's the only savior of America, what's here. This was created in 2011. It's not something new. Now there's a guy on YouTube. His name is Dr. Scott Young. Not related in any way, shape, or form. But he has written several books on it. He's a physician, he's a doctor, written books and talks about Nesara and Gesara. Gesara, G is global. Nesara is national, it's our side. And this stuff is important because we have to be financial preppers, and that was what my idea of my talk was tonight. I help people prep. There's a couple of things that I tell folks when they come to see me. Now, if you have enough courage to come and see me, first meeting's 45 minutes to an hour. I make 2 promises. I won't ask you to buy a thing, and there won't be a second appointment unless you choose to come back. But I show people a totally different road. Scott Peck, the road less traveled. That is the road that we need to be on to survive what is coming. Some of the advice I give people, people talk about gold and silver and that type of stuff. How many people have 3 to 6 months of cash at home? Very good. Because the digital currency is coming, and when the digital currency comes, how many brick and mortar banks do you think are going to be left? I don't think there's going to be many, so cash is going to be hard to come by. I don't think they can do away with it like that. But having cash is going to be important for 3 to 6 months of your routine monthly expenses to get through that tunnel that's coming. Gold and silver, again, my opinion, I own mainly Silver Eagle type coins, which are government 1 ounce sterling silver coins printed and minted by the U.S. government. They can't be questioned. You can buy ingots, and I've had those in the past. You can buy ingots. They're not certified by the government or anything. And I believe those 1 ounce silver coins could buy a loaf of bread or something if so it's insurance. I don't buy them because, it's a good investment, it's going to go. I believe it's going to go up in value, but that's not why I bought it. You get my meaning to what I'm saying? It's my hedge, it's my insurance that I can buy necessities of life in some way if I have to. Because there's no end to what's going on. Do you understand that? There is no conclusion to what's going on. In the last 12 months, the debt and the unfunded liability increased by $25 trillion in 1 year. Anybody know what the GDP was in the last 12 months? 26 trillion. You got to say that again? The debt and unfunded liability went up by 25 trillion. The GDP in America was 26 trillion. I'm gonna wrap it up there. I got lots. I could go on and on and on, but I really want to talk about my book, The Family Money Farm. The Family Money Farm is, in all the years that I've been doing what I do, I was a guy that always invested the money to go to this seminar, that seminar. I have 3 different, complete different financial planning softwares that I have mastered, and I'm a master mentor in one of them, and I've taught the other ones. And what I came to realize a few years ago is I don't use just one. I don't use the other. What I have learned in my awakening was all of them give me something different, and that's where the Family Money Farm idea came from. Because the Family Money Farm is multi-generational planning. Now, I know many of you in the room here tonight are chronologically gifted and probably don't have a lot of time left to do any planning. But what I encourage you to do, as I give everybody tonight a copy of my book and the gift in the book, I encourage everybody to share the information with your children, because they're sitting on a mountain that is so big that it's impossible that it would ever be paid in any way, shape, or form. So we have to teach people about multi-generation. I'll just share one little story. I have clients that go all the way back 48 years. There's still a few alive. Some of them have died, but when I left Prudential, they followed me. They came with me. And I've got folks that have been with me 20, 25 years, and they have accumulated large amounts of capital in life insurance policies. Now, everybody says, life insurance? Now, let me quantify that. There are about 800 companies out there in the marketplace that sell some kind of life insurance. I'm only talking about 10 or 12 companies total. So the chance of you finding out what I'm talking about, it's a cold day in Hades to find out. But all of those companies, 99 point something percent of them are stockholder owned and are operated for a profit. Oh, we sell a competitive product. Our premium's cheaper than somebody else's. That has nothing to do with it, folks. That has nothing to do with it. Saving money in a life insurance policy for 100 or more years, the mutual companies, dividend-paying mutual company, is the secret, because they are owned by the policyholder. There aren't any stockholders. And they're required under federal law to distribute the profits at the end of every year. So there isn't anybody skimming the top or whatever. Now, in that contract, there's a lot of mutuals out there that aren't mutual in my mind because they don't like people to borrow. They want to stay in control of your money. But you need to learn how to be the bank. You need to learn the concept of being your own banker. Now, an example of that is you're 25 years old, you just got your first job making $30,000, $40,000 a year. So you and dad or mom go down to the garage and you buy your first car. Mom or dad co-signs for it, and it's a $25,000 car. That's not an expensive car today. 8% interest for 60 months. The payment's a little over $500 a month, and at the end of 60 months, you paid $5,400 of interest in the bank. That's $5,400 of interest that were invested for the next 45 years to your retirement. It would be worth $277,000. One car, 60 months of interest. Now imagine that. Now you buy another one every 5 years, you do the same thing over and over again. You only do one. A lot of families have two. You only do one, and at the end of that period of time, it's $776,000 lost in opportunity costs. Now, I'm sure some of you have financial planners and people you get advice from. Did anybody ever tell you about opportunity cost? Where is opportunity cost? Everybody loses money unknowingly and unnecessarily, and when you lose money, it has opportunity cost. The interest you could have earned on the money along the way. So on the family money farm, as capital is accumulated, the goal is to accumulate accessible capital that you can get at without the government, without penalties and all those other kind of things. And that becomes the foundation of the family bank. Now, I have clients right now, their son, they've been with me 20-some years. They're two doctors. They have a lot of money. They saved a lot of money. When I met them, they had a mortgage, a home equity loan, 2 car loans, credit cards with balances, and $200,000 in student loans. Now, I'm not talking about them. I have several other families that are just the $100,000 a year folks, household income. So you don't have to be rich to do this. But today, they only have a mortgage, and everything else is paid off, and they got close to $2 million accumulated. So we're going to pay for the son's college. It's $29,000 a semester, $60,000 a year. They're everybody's familiar with the FAFSA form. When you go to the government for a FAFSA form to find out what you're eligible for through the government, their expected family contribution was $29,000 a year.
Yeah.
So we borrowed from the insurance company using their policy as collateral. They did not remove their money, so the money still earned interest and still earned dividends while they had a loan at the insurance company. Because the insurance company's got to invest money somewhere. So their loan to you is like an investment to them. And they charge you interest. Interest right now is 5% compared to the market. I think that's a pretty good deal. So 30,000 times 5% interest, how much is that? $1,500, $1,500 of interest in a year, $15,000 interest in a year on $30,000. 30,000 again, so that's 60. So it's about $30,000 a year in interest. No, I'm sorry, $3,000 a year, $60,000. Okay? So at the end of 4 years, at $29,000 a year, which is what the government told them they had to spend, they got $3,000, $6,000, $9,000, $12,000 of interest. Now Sonny graduates college and he gets a job. He's going to pay mom and dad back. What's his incentive to pay mom and dad back? Well, first off, everybody, if you have parents alive, don't you sometimes worry about mom and dad? Are they okay? We all, good people, think that way, I believe. So paying the loans back helps secure mom and dad's financial position for their retirement. But those big life insurance policies get to pay a death. We all get to die at least once in a lifetime, right, folks? So when the parents die, the death benefit is 100% absolutely tax-free. So if you were that son, would you have incentive to pay mom and dad back the student loans, knowing that someday all of that money is going to come tax-free? Would you rather have a 401k or a totally tax-free retirement plan? Now, as Sonny grows along, he gets married, needs to buy a car. Is he going to go to the bank and borrow the money to buy the car? Or is he going to go to the family bank and become part of the trust in the household? So he becomes on the board of directors as part of the family. We have to teach young people how to manage money, because if not, the financial world is going to continue to brainwash everybody. I hope you enjoy my ideas and what I talked about. We're going to pass out a book. Anybody?
You want me to help you?
Pass out books? No, it's my job. It's a gift. Now, while they're passing out the books, in the book is a gift. And you don't have to take it out of the book. There's a story with it, so it's in there. And there's one little gold
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you. That helps.
Okay, on one side of it says 1ST, First Consultant. That's the name of my company. But that one on there, between you and I, you would always be first. I am a licensed fiduciary by legality, by license, so it has to be that way. Underneath of that, if you read down under the coin, it says, "In God we trust." Never ever forget that, because everything comes from God above. On the back side of the coin, if you turn it over, is a hologram of my building. It's a two-dimensional hologram of my building in Beaver. But there is also an eagle on that coin. And it is the most important message I can give you. I believe an eagle resides inside the heart of every human being. I spend every day of my life and my career helping people realize the eagle is there, to see the possibilities that are still there in their future, and learn how to let the eagle out of the cage. Because when your eagle gets out of the cage and it flies, dreams in life start to come true. Now this is just an ounce of copper, and it'll tarnish after a while. So my hope is that as time goes on, as it tarnishes, whether you put it on a desk or a paperweight, if you're a golfer, I use it as a ball marker when I'm playing golf with guys, and they say, "What's that?" But I hope it reminds you that you never, never, never quit. You never give up. You are the example to the next generation. It is the most important responsibility that we all have, is being that example. As bad as it is sometimes around us, we still have to be an individual and be that example. Thank you so much for your time and inviting me to speak.